The Interrogation, Lieutenant French 3 steam irons and the coolest cookie in town. I still remember the first time the interrogation room opened on my childhood screen, the sudden shift from the bright jostling sidewalk to that cooler, more deliberate space where authority sat behind a desk and Lucy Carmichael still, carrying the faint scent of department store air and candy wrappers, was invited to sit down. The transition has never lost its power for me. One moment she is a tired woman hoping the bus will come. The next she is a suspect whose every ordinary detail is about to be held up to the light and found suspicious. Watching it now, I feel the same tight mixture of dread and delight I felt as a child. Dread because the machinery of misunderstanding has begun to turn in earnest, and delight because Lucille Ball is about to meet that machinery with the full ungovernable force of her comic intelligence. Hi, your name is Carmichael. Lucille Carmichael, yes. Lucille is spelled with 2 L's, 3 if you count the first one. The line arrives early, almost before the formalities have settled, and it remains one of the purest expressions of Lucy's character I know. In the face of police officers, who have already decided she is the red-headed shoplifter they have been hunting, she pauses to correct the spelling of her own name. The pedantry is not mere fussiness, it is a small h and fierce insistence on the reality of the self. I have always heard in it the quiet desperation of a woman who senses that the story being written about her is already slipping out of her control, and who therefore clings to the one fact she can still verify: the letters that make up who she is. Lieutenant French, the script sometimes calls him Finch, and the slight instability of the name feels appropriate to a world in which identities are already beginning to blur, informs her of her rights with the measured cadence of official procedure. It is my duty to inform you that anything you say will be held against you, and that you have a right to legal counsel if you so desire. Lucy's response is immediate and utterly characteristic. Oh no, I don't think that's necessary. It isn't that big a thing. The understatement is breathtaking. She still believes, or wants to believe, that she is here because of a chocolate-covered coconut caramel cream wrapper. The officers, of course, are working from an entirely different script, one that involves pearls, a string of big jobs, and a red-headed woman who has been slipping through their fingers for months. The gap between these two understandings is the comic engine of the scene. And Ball plays that gap with exquisite precision. She is not stupid. She is simply living inside a different story, and the collision of the two stories produces a kind of helpless, escalating absurdity that has never stopped feeling fresh to me. When they ask her to tell them what she did that day, Lucy begins with the careful, almost ritualistic recounting of an ordinary morning. I got up early, about 7:45, I think, maybe it was 10 of, yeah, about 10 of 8, I think, and I read the paper. I always read the paper every morning, and I saw this ad for this marvelous sale. The specificity of the time, the mild uncertainty corrected into greater precision. The insistence on the daily habit of reading the paper, all of it feels like a woman trying to anchor herself in the known world, even as that world is being reinterpreted around her. Then comes the moment that still makes me laugh aloud and in the same breath feel a pang of protective affection: the explanation of Mary Jane. I called Mary Jane, and I Mary, who's Mary Jane? She's my cat. The officer's reaction is perfect. Do you often phone your cat? Lucy's answer: oh yes. Always when she's away from home. I always call her and I say, "What's new, pussycat?" is delivered with such earnest goodwill that the absurdity becomes almost tender. I have never been able to watch this exchange without thinking of the private languages we invent to protect the people we love. In that instant, Mary Jane is transformed into a cat so that Lucy can keep her friend out of the path of the oncoming trouble. The lie is clumsy, transparent, and oddly moving. It is the lie of someone who still believes that small fabrications can hold back large consequences. The list of purchases that follows is a masterclass in comic accumulation. 3 steam irons. A little bottle of cologne. A pair of curtains, no, 2 pair of curtains. A new eyelash curler. A floor lamp that is being delivered because, as Lucy reasonably points out, you just can't walk out carrying a floor lamp. Each item is ordinary. Together they form a portrait of a woman who cannot resist the gravitational pull of a sale, who fills her life with small, hopeful acquisitions because the larger securities remain out of reach. When the lieutenant observes that she shot pretty good, Lucy accepts the compliment with genuine pride. Well, thank you. It isn't easy with a crowd around like that. You have to be fast. She is still speaking the language of shopping. They are already speaking the language of crime. The double meaning hangs in the air between them, invisible to her and glaringly obvious to them. And the tension of that invisibility is almost physically painful to watch. What has always moved me most deeply about this interrogation is the way Lucy keeps trying to explain the one thing she believes she is guilty of, the candy wrapper, while the officers keep redirecting her toward a crime she did not commit. When they press her about Western Avenue and a sable cape, her memory snags on something far smaller and far more human. Oh, now I remember. Oh, yeah, peanuts. That's what it was, peanuts. I finished it off and just didn't even think about it. I admit it. I admitted, but it was just a little bag. The officers reply, in our book that's a big bag that cost somebody $4,000, as the moment the two realities collide with maximum force. Lucy's bewilderment is complete. She cannot understand how a bag of peanuts has become a $4,000 theft. The audience of course understands that the officers are talking about the pearls, but Lucy is still trapped inside her own innocent narrative. Ball plays the confusion without a trace of condescension. There is no winking at the camera, no indication that Lucy is secretly shrewder than she appears. She is simply a woman whose ordinary day has been seized and rewritten by forces she cannot yet name. The officer's growing admiration for her supposed criminal coolness is one of the richest ironies in the entire composite. I gotta admit, Carmichael, you are really something. She's the coolest cookie I ever saw, Lieutenant. Yeah, she's a real criminal type. No conscience, no nerves. Every quality they ascribe to the master shoplifter is in reality the quality of a woman who genuinely does not understand the seriousness of the situation she is in. Her lack of nerves is not the product of professional detachment, it is the product of a fundamental category error. She thinks she is discussing litter. They think they are discussing grand larceny. The more calmly she explains the candy wrapper, the more convinced they become that they are dealing with a hardened professional who can discuss $4,000 scores as if they were peanut shells. I have always found this reversal almost metaphysical in its precision. The series takes the most ordinary of women and through the simple mechanism of mistaken identity transforms her into the very thing the culture most fears and most romanticizes, the cool, nerveless female criminal. When the threat of 10 years is finally spoken aloud, Lucy's reaction is pure undiluted disbelief. 10 years. It was only a chocolate-covered coconut caramel cream wrapper. The specificity of the candy is perfect. It is not just any wrapper, it is a particular named, almost lovingly remembered piece of confectionery. In that detail, the entire emotional logic of the scene is concentrated. Lucy is still living in a world of small named pleasures and small named transgressions. The officers are living in a world of grand larceny and long prison terms. The laughter that follows, first the officers then the soundtrack's extended almost hysterical peals, feels to me like the sound of two incompatible realities grinding against each other. Someone suggests calling a psychiatrist. Someone else agrees that he's nuts. The pronoun is ambiguous. Is Lucy the one who is nuts, or is the entire situation? The ambiguity is left unresolved. And in that unresolved space the comedy finds its deepest resonance. I think often about what this interrogation reveals about the culture that produced it. The mid-1960s were a time when the boundaries between respectable womanhood and criminality could still feel perilously thin, especially for women who moved through public space with shopping bags and independent space, energy. Lucy's red hair, her shopping, her refusal to be immediately deferential, all of it becomes evidence in a case that has almost nothing to do with her actual behavior. The series does not need to make an explicit political argument. It simply places its heroine inside the machinery and lets the absurdity speak. Lucille Ball's performance is the argument. Every time she tries to return the conversation to the candy wrapper, every time she offers another reasonable explanation that only deepens the officer's suspicion, she is demonstrating how easily a woman's reality can be overridden by the stories others need to tell about her. There is a private truth in this scene that has stayed with me for decades. It is the truth that we are all at various moments living inside narratives that other people are writing without our consent. Lucy sits in that interrogation room and tries with increasing bewilderment to make her ordinary day legible to men who have already decided what kind of day it must have been. Watching her, I feel the same helpless affection I felt as a child. And also a more adult recognition of how often I have been the person on one side, or the other of such a misunderstanding. The comedy does not diminish the recognition, it makes it bearable. Ball's genius is that she never asks us to choose between laughing at Lucy and feeling for her. The two responses are the same response seen from slightly different angles. The 3 steam irons return again and again in the officer's questioning, each time gathering more sinister weight. What began as a bargain becomes in their eyes evidence of a busy day of systematic theft. Lucy's proud accounting of her speed and efficiency in the crowded store becomes in their ears the confession of a professional who knows how to work a room. The floor lamp that is being delivered becomes a detail so brazen it almost impresses them. "What nerve," one of them says. And Lucy, still operating inside her own story, accepts the comment as a compliment on her shopping prowess. The double meanings multiply until the air in the room feels thick with them. I have never tired of watching Ball navigate that thickness. She does not play Lucy as unaware in any simple sense. She plays her as a woman whose attention is fixed on a different set of facts, and whose loyalty to those facts remains absolute even as the world around her rearranges itself into a shape she cannot recognize. By the time the interrogation reaches its feverish peak with threats of 10 years and suggestions of psychiatric evaluation, the emotional weather of the scene has changed completely from the weary, companionable tone of the sidewalk. Lucy is no longer simply tired after shopping. She is a woman who has begun to understand, however dimly, that the story of her day is being taken away from her, yet even in that understanding she remains stubbornly, gloriously herself. She continues to explain. She continues to correct. She continues to offer the small, precise details of a life that refuses to become the larger, more dramatic life the officers require of it. That refusal is for me the heart of the scene's enduring power. In a culture that often demands women become either smaller or more spectacular than they are, Lucy Carmichael insists on remaining exactly the size of her actual experience. The fact that this insistence is read as the cool of a master criminal is the final, perfect irony. I return to this interrogation whenever I need to be reminded that comedy at its best is not an escape from the world's misunderstandings but a way of living inside them with clarity and without despair. Lucille Ball takes the most ordinary of women, places her in a room where every ordinary fact is being reinterpreted as evidence of extraordinary crime, and somehow makes the experience feel like a form of grace. Watching her here, I feel the same complicated love I have always felt. Love for the character who keeps trying to make herself understood, love for the actress who understood that the trying itself was the most eloquent thing a person could do, and love for the series that trusted its audience to hold both the port of heaven never, laughter and the ache at the same time. The candy wrapper has done its work. The steam irons have been entered into evidence. The coolest cookie in town is about to be led away to a cell. Still not entirely convinced that any of this is quite real, I follow her as I always have, with my heart in my throat and a smile I cannot quite suppress.